All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're for a real treat tonight on Sportswire Radio because we get double duty tonight. We get a combo here because our guest tonight, who is with us once again, not only is she a tremendous singer, she's got some new music she's working on. She was just at a big anime convention. She's also doing a lot of stuff in the ring. And in fact, I had the good fortune to watch her in the ring last weekend over at Wrestling Appreciation Society's Deadline, their inaugural show. And she's going to be in the ring again this weekend. She's going to tell us all about it, plus a lot of stuff she's working on in the pikes here. So she needs no further introduction, but because she's here with us and she sings, I got to give her the best one yet. So, with that, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show. They call her the rock idol of the UK. She's also one part of the non-stop action wrestling tag team champions. She is literally the definition of non-stop, never stop. That is Johnny. Hey! Jenny, how'd I do?
You're getting better and better each time.
Well, I think what I figured out now toward the end of these introductions, if you notice, I'm kind of like going like in midair and just holding everybody's first and last names. I think people seem to like that the most. And this is like the third or fourth time we've had you on, so hopefully by the next time it'll be even better. But Jenny, a lot to speak about with you tonight. We've got some music to talk about. We've also got some wrestling to talk about here. But I really want to talk about first this EP that you gave me a couple of weeks back. And I got to say, what a phenomenal job here. And just talk about kind of the inspiration of it. Because I really kind of think in a lot of ways, it showed a lot of, I guess, who you are at that moment. But to kind of where you are now, where you're transitioning in the wrestling ring, we're seeing these different sides of the rock idol. And for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, I mean, talk about the inspiration of this EP and kind of to where it's led you right now.
The EP was just kind of like a little pet project. Because when I did the EP, it was during lockdown. So apart from going to work, I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't leave the house. And so obviously I couldn't go around performing. So I spent, I think, about a full year putting the full EP together.
Wow.
You know, there's a lot of like different kind of inspirations. So each song sounds different from the other. So I guess it's not the most cohesive EP, but it definitely allowed me to explore different things. You know, some songs are heavier than others, some songs are more stripped back. So it was kind of nice to play around with different things and take from that what I want to put into future music.
You know, it's interesting because you spoke about that. That's exactly kind of what I thought in listening to the album here, Jenny, because I saw so many different elements of who you might be, which is obviously we'll talk about in a little while when it comes to what you do in the ring. Because I heard elements of punk, I heard elements of like pop, I heard elements obviously of the J rock anime, you know, all that stuff you're obviously very well known in. But I even heard elements of like almost heavy metal. I heard elements of almost, I guess, hard rock, almost like all these different components, whether it be Dragon Force, Slipknot. I even heard some Guns N' Roses a little bit, Axl Rose, and then I heard obviously what you're known for. I mean, maybe in a way it was a good thing that you had a non-cohesive EP.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite fun because obviously I don't perform like all of the songs every time I do a performance. So it's kind of like a little bag of tricks. You know, sometimes I'll throw out like a heavy song or I'll sometimes throw out a more like punky sound. So it's a bit of fun for everyone. So it's a bit predictable each time. Because I do have like a core of what I want to be as a singer, but at the same time, I do want every show to be different. Every time people listen to my music, to experience something different.
Sure, and that makes a lot of sense here. And I have a lot of comments, and I'll get to them here in a second. But I mean, did you also feel in the songwriting process, how did that help you in terms of what you're doing now musically? How was that process? Like, let's talk about the songwriting process to the EP.
The songwriting process, I mean, there were some songs that were like really, really easy to write, and then other ones were a bit more difficult to write. So it's not easy each time, and each time I write a song, it's never always the same. Sometimes I instantly know what I want to write about, and then there's other times where I'm kind of stuck on what I want to write about. But I mean, with the EP, each song does have like a it does have an element of stuff that's actually happened to me in my life, but then listening to it throughout, it's kind of starting up, going on like a downward thing, and then having like a more hopeful thing at the end. So it's kind of like a little internal battle, I guess, with yourself listening to it. But then at the end, it's kind of, it doesn't matter, you know, whether I'm this perfect person, I'm still that same person, but I'm getting better and better each time.
Well,
Yeah.
obviously, I would have to think "End of the World" was such a COVID type of title. No.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was very inspired by kind of like a lot of vampire media, I guess. I'm a big, massive fan of like the vampire genre. So
Okay.
like old shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, Interview with a Vampire, and then
Yep.
even just like heavy metal music as well. And I just remember just thinking about it, because as well there was like COVID happening as well. And I guess I kind of took it and made this song where it's like, oh, it's the end of the world, we're going to cause havoc. So it's a fun song, but it's a bit of a dark one as well. So some people listen to it and think, oh my God, I don't expect to hear this from someone like Jenny, but it's a fun song to perform. And it's surprisingly one of my more popular songs to perform.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
really liked it a lot. I thought it was kind of one of those straight. How can you say? You said heavy metal. It definitely had that straight kind of like hard rocking, more of a metallic, but maybe punk as well. So it had a few
yeah.
different genres in there. So I could definitely see that. But let me get to some comments because people want to
No,
say hello. Skulls, of course, who's a soul hunter. You might have heard of him. Says hello, everyone. He also wants to point out that the EWF has a 30th anniversary show in Covina, California, which I have never been to. He also says he's been in 2 music videos. I think we'd like to know maybe about that. Good evening from obviously one of our very good friends and certainly somebody that you kind of know a little bit by
yes.
now. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about him in a few minutes as well. Dante O'Cara, who says very talented individual, both in and out of
Oh,
the ring.
thank
So
you.
shout out to Dante. Also, good evening from Uncle Ralph, who's managing the CWE Tag Team Champions, the Modern Day Mafia. And you're a fellow Tag Team Champion, so obviously,
Yeah.
certainly from
Oh,
one champion to another here. But I was curious here, and also this individual we know very well here, Connor. I think we can kind of guess who that might be, evening
evening.
guys. But I was curious in also the instrument process. You talked about doing the EP through COVID. So what was like? Did you have a band, and like how was that process like?
Um, well, as much as I've kind of got a following in the UK, I do have like a lot of connections online. When I first started being a singer, I was mainly online because that's where I could get more of an interaction out there, getting connections and stuff. So I worked with like different artists from different countries. For example, with Kawaii Killer, I worked with someone called Serena, who's an amazing composer, and I kind of approached him with like, this is the kind of sound that I want, and we were back and forth with different things. And then I was working with different people, so it was kind of nice to not have, as much as I like working with certain people, it was kind of nice to explore how different people worked as well, because some songs I already had lyrics for, and then added the music to that. And then sometimes it was a case of we put a music track together, and hearing the music, I'm like, this is the kind of song that I can imagine it sounding like. So it's different things each time, really. Like, for example, there's a song called Humanity, and
Yes.
that song was heavily inspired by an idol group that I know from Japan called Passcode. And
Okay.
they're very, very heavy metal.
Yeah, that was the one I felt
Yeah.
that almost had that Axl Rose vocal, where it almost
Mhm.
reminded me of something, at
Yeah.
least in the opening. Although later on, I think I hear more of a Dragon Force edge to it. But
Mm.
that's the one where I really felt like, in a lot of ways, that it had like that Use Your Illusion vibe a little bit in a way, just
Yeah,
kind of with those vocals. So I don't know if that was the inspiration, but obviously people hear different things when they
yeah.
hear music. So
Yeah, there's a song called "Ray" from the group Passcode it's very uplifting, and it's all in Japanese. But listening to the song and just like the emotions and just like the uplifting piano accompanying like heavy guitar, it was something that I really really liked altogether. So when I was
and that
putting
and
the
that was
songs,
where I kind of heard
yeah,
a little bit of like I'm trying to think what was the song, the famous song where they spent so much money on the video. Strange, that's it.
yeah,
That's the one from Use Your Illusion too, where I mean, listen, not to go too much on it, but Axl Rose jumps on like a dolphin or something like that. He goes
oh,
in the water and like if you go on YouTube, it has like a
yeah,
billion views, and you'll kind of figure that out here. But I have some comments. People want to say
yeah,
hello. Skull says he wants to check out your music. Well, you can do that. You got to follow Jenny on Facebook. You got to follow her on Instagram. You please, Skulls, of all people, Skulls, because you're always posting videos here. You want to hear some? Maybe Jenny will even do some music for you when you return to the ring here, coming up on July the 1st for our friends over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. So for you, Skulls, you can follow Jenny Hayes at Jenny Hayes Idol on Instagram. Also, make sure to follow her on Twitter as well, and you can do the same here. Michael Knowles says, "When I see a rock idol and a Buffy fan, must be Jenny Hayes."
yeah,
And I got to give somebody else a shout out who got some vocals. She got some great range as well, and that is
yeah.
Shelby Sinar, who's
Yeah.
jumped in the ring with you, says, "Looking forward to June." Anything you want to say to Shelby?
Hiya, Shelby. I can't wait to see her again because I went to a training session at GTM a few weeks ago, and we had a bit of a little practice session in the ring together, and she's got a powerful kick.
Yes, so we've had her on
Yeah.
before. Trust me, she's another one. She's not only got a powerful voice, she's probably more powerful in the ring than and her pipes speak for
Mm.
themselves.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely no question about that. And I want to talk about Kawaii Killer because that was the opening song. Now, Humanity, conversely, was the end of the EP.
yeah,
But Kawaii Killer, that was like almost. Now, did you listen to like a video game when you were hearing that Opa? Da, da, da? Was there like a video game inspired influence there in the intro of that? Because it had
um,
that very much like old like Mega Man like
yeah,
kind of opening. I'm sure you've gotten that already. So
yeah. I kind of wanted it to be like a fusion of typical anime J-pop music, kind of mixed in with more of a heavier sound because when I
yeah,
first started singing, I didn't originally do rock music. I did kind of generic pop music, trying to explore different genres of what I wanted to do. But I always wanted to do rock music deep down, but I always felt that because I was a woman, I didn't feel like I'd be able to pull it off, if that makes sense. So Kawaii Kill is kind of that anthem where it's like, I'm not going to be doing what people expect me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. So it's kind of like killing the cute side of me off, I guess, and being like
but that's
original self, I
interesting
guess.
though that you said that because when I think about female singers, especially in hard rock and heavy metal, obviously back in the day you had Pat
Yeah,
Benatar, you had the Wilsons, but even I think about Arch Enemy, Nightwish. I mean, there's
yeah,
still a lot of singers now. I mean, if you want to go more on the mainstream side, Evanescence, obviously, there's like a
yeah,
lot of female singers though that they pull this off. So I'm surprised why you would say something like this when I just rattled off a
yeah.
countless list of female fronted bands. I mean, talk to me why you said that.
It's because when I was back in, I guess like the equivalent of high school, I guess, I was really, really confident in expressing myself with music, and I was in my music class, and I was literally the only girl in the class, and obviously there was a lot of
Okay.
old school misogynistic attitudes. So oh, it's this girl, she can't do this, that, and the other. She's just a singer. She's got no clue about the technicality of music, etc. They thought I just wanted to come in, sing a song, and look fancy. But it was just I was really, really passionate about music, and then I kind of had to fight a bit extra to kind of stand out, I guess. And I've had a lot of experiences from, you know, sadly just men be it kind of having this attitude of you can't pull it off the same as we can. you know, which
Well, there are some people. I mean, like I said, I just rattled off a ton
yeah,
of bands there that they didn't seem to have a problem really with female-fronted bands. I mean,
no,
Evanescence had probably like the biggest album or like the biggest rock album
yeah,
post like 2000.
yeah,
I mean, I obviously mentioned on the heavier side, Nightwish, Arch Enemy. I mean,
yeah,
so I could go down the list of a whole bunch of
mhm,
bands here that have had female-fronted singers. I mean, on the popular, no doubt, certainly Gwen Stefani. So I mean, listen.
yeah,
I mean, so anybody says that they clearly need to get their heads examined here. But also here, this individual who we know says Mr. Dan
oh
Robertson, of course, the
yeah, well
Cult of
done.
Killjoy Evening from the Cult. Dante O'Cara says enjoy having the track "The Prey" playing in the back while
Yeah.
playing DMC on Xbox. So what does that mean to you then, when you have people like that? I mean, I know Dante O'Cara we know from obviously Enso, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But I mean, what does that mean when people play your music and like they're in the background or they're playing a video game or they're going out? I mean, I'm sure you get this all the time, but what does that mean to you?
It's just really, really nice. I mean, I have a lot of there's a lot of hard work that's been put into the music and stuff. So I've had people message me before saying I'm listening to your music at the gym and it's really good for a workout, or I'm just relaxing. So I think it's quite nice that I've got music that people can listen to in any kind of situation, whether it's just going for a walk or they're listening to it in the background while doing housework. It does really mean a lot, and I mean that's one of the main reasons why I like doing music. It's something that people can listen to and relate to as well. Because I write these songs and have my own interpretations of them and how I want them to be heard, but sometimes it's quite nice for people to listen to the songs and have their own interpretation of it as well for their own personal connection.
Absolutely, no question about that, and certainly that's why we really wanted to have you on here. Now, just going back to when you talked about actually making the EP, reminded me. I was listening to an interview a couple of days ago from James Hetfield, the frontman of Metallica, also plays rhythm guitar for the band. They were talking about, well, how did you make their new album, 72 Seasons? And he's talking about, well, we did a lot of this on Zoom, and basically we would kind of spend because during a lot of the record was made during COVID. Obviously,
Yeah,
doesn't come out till now, and they were talking about basically how they made this record and how people were just in different places. And you were kind of saying the same thing, basically, where you didn't
yeah.
really have a band and live and such. I mean, would you have wished to have maybe made this album with a live band or a fronted band? I'm just kind of curious because even like I said, even a band like Metallica, makes an album that just came out that wasn't actually made mostly in person. It's a different world than it was obviously since COVID. So I was just curious about that.
I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to go into a proper, amazing professional studio and work with, like big names. But it's the simplicity of just being able to do it over the internet through things like Zoom. I mean, most of the stuff with the EP, it was more of me getting in touch with these musicians and other composers and saying, this is what I want to do. And then they had their own ideas. And it was just like a collaboration of like both sides. Sometimes I'd have like a track sent to me and then I'm like, oh, I've got this little idea. So it's just like a lot of back and forth, but it just shows how in a perfect world you'd want a big massive studio, but you can easily do it from the comfort of your own
Yeah,
home.
it's a different world. I mean, you think about just back in the day when people would make an EP, even you would talk about spending hundreds of thousands of pounds because nobody had Pro Tools, nobody had
No.
Zoom, nobody had. Listen, I have NCH software. Nobody had all these different programs or you could even dial up a musician and say, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do
Yeah.
that? Can you help me write notes?" So it's a different world. So you don't even need those big time record producers, those big time labels, those big time session costs,
No.
because session costs through the roof. I was speaking with somebody last week and she was telling me that she wanted to go back into the studio. And I was saying, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, she's like, well, what would you recommend? I would say, well, I would try to find something for like less than $100 or £100 an hour in the UK and,
Yeah.
try to go about it and do it without a producer. It almost sounds like the way you made the EP is almost kind of like how Ozzy makes his albums. I listened to the last Ozzy
Yeah.
album, basically the whole Ozzy album. He didn't play really with a band. It was Duff McKagan here, it was Chad Smith there,
Yeah.
Robert Carullo there, Tony Iommi, the late Jeff Beck, Zach Wilde. I mean, listen, those are people that you'll be playing with, Jenny, very, very soon here. And I want to give a couple of more shout outs to some people. C2K from The RWA up in Rochester, New York says hello. Hello to
Hello?
C2K from the RWA. Also, C2K does some music, but he does rapping, a little different from what you do.
Ah.
Skull says it's like the Skulls intro music called She Brings the Darkness by Crash Karma. Reminds me of my dark time. Okay, I haven't heard of Crash Karma. I might have to check that out. This individual, which I'll get to in a little while, says evening. Certainly want to give him a few thoughts and hopefully some
Yeah.
encouragement in a little while. But I did want to talk about, before I transition into wrestling, because I do have some people that really want to hear you talk some
Yeah.
wrestling. I want to talk to you about wrestling as well. You were at the Manchester Anime Convention there, and a lot of people were at that. And talk about that experience. It's on YouTube, by the way. If you do a search, Jenny Hayes Idol,
Yeah.
subscribe to your page where you can watch the show. It's about 45 minutes or so. Really, really good show. A lot of different influences we just spoke about. So talk about, for those that are listening and watching, your experience at the Manchester Anime Convention last month.
It was a really fun show. I mean, it was a little tiny crowd, but it was such a fun show. I mean, everyone was really involved with it, really excited to clap along, and obviously some songs they didn't know. It was my first time performing my new song Offender, which will be coming out at the end of May. It was kind of like 2 nights before I said, "Oh, I'm going to be performing it randomly," and a lot of people didn't know it was my new song, but the crowd reception with it was very. It was probably one of the songs with the biggest applause at the end of it, which was really, really heartwarming, especially with it being a song that nobody's heard before. So
Really?
that was really, really good, and there's been a lot of excitement and buzz about it. But I mean, just for this gig alone, I have to say, if out of all of the cities that I've been to in the UK, I do have to say Manchester's probably one of the best places to go for a gig. I mean, I went to go see another band called Black Veil Brides back in Manchester in
Yeah, of course. I know
February.
the Black Veil Brides, of
And
course.
just like everyone's just so lovely. And, you know, even though it was people paying to come and see me, it was really, really nice to chat to a lot of them afterwards and, you know, talking about like different things like me and you were talking right now. So it was a really nice performance, and I can't wait to go back to Manchester again because it's such an open, accepting place. You know, it's very LGBT friendly. You know, there's all walks of life in the city, and it's just full of life, and it's very inspiring as a musician to be there as well, because there's just all sorts of different influences there as well.
Does that make you creatively want to grow as an artist, or also maybe give you, the term we use quite a bit on Sportswire Radio these days, confidence? So does this give you more of, I guess, an artistic freedom, and also on top of that, maybe some confidence going into future stuff? Does that, after a show like this, does that help you at all with that?
Yeah, it does always help. I mean, I can have as much self-confidence as I can muster, but it's always nice to have people encouraging you, especially, you know, old fans as well as new. So it's a new thing of, you know, it's constantly evolving, and you know, there's more people joining my journey as I keep going, which is the excitement of it. You know, I know I'm on the up and up, but it's, you don't know what's going to happen at any point in time, which adds to the excitement as well. You know, because I've got more shows coming up this year, and maybe fingers crossed, a show over in the US. So I'm kind of waiting back to hear from the event. So hopefully that
Well,
might be.
please let us know, Jenny. You are the rock idol of the UK,
Yeah.
but maybe you'll be the rock idol of the US soon. So at this point,
Mhm.
so you gotta let us know on Sportswire. You gotta
Yes,
please let us
definitely.
know, and we hope to certainly make it out there. And obviously, we are here on Sportswire Radio with the rock idol of the UK, maybe soon to be the rock idol of the world. And Jenny Hayes, she's got some music out there. I want to give Jenny a big plug here, because look at this nice little thing here that she wrote for us here on Sportswire Radio. Look at this here. Look at these
Oh,
nice little things that she wrote. Let me see if I can get it correctly. If everybody can see it, look at these nice little things here that she had to say for us here. If you want to zoom in for it, so that's what you say. Can you see that there, Jenny? Well, you remember writing this to me? You remember writing
yeah,
that?
I can
Very
see
nice.
Rise to
Yeah.
Society on there as
Yep,
well.
absolutely. No question about that here. So I want to make sure everybody follows Jenny Hayes, so you can go and listen to music like the one that I have here at Jenny Hayes Idol on Instagram, also Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Give her a sub, a like, and follow. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce here. And before I come back and plug myself, I want to give a big plug to the Big Cheese Logan, the CWE UK champ, because he's actually got a little comment for you. Only here for 5 or 10 minutes. Hello to my friends in Manchester. It's the place to be. We've created fine music. Oasis, The Smiths, Happy Mondays, The Stone Roses, New Order, Joy Division, and even Simply Red, Whoop, and Manchester, la la la. I didn't realize that. I knew the Stone Roses because I actually interviewed a band called what was the band? It was the Frantics and the
Mm.
Superlatives. That's it. The Superlatives were from Manchester. The Frantics were influenced by the Stone Roses. So it was the
Yeah.
Superlatives, and the Stone Roses were like the band that everybody talks about in the UK for a long time. They were like one of the biggest rock bands of the 90s. And of course, Oasis, which I knew everybody knows Oasis, obviously. We know the
Yeah.
Gallagher brothers, and then the Smiths. And I didn't realize that history. Did you know that history of all those bands from Manchester, Jenny?
Oh
Because
yeah, there was I did music technology at college, so I learned how to make music as well as writing it.
oh
And
wow, okay,
one of the topics that we did was about the Manchester music scene. So obviously we went through, Happy Mondays, the Smiths, Joy Division, and just like that whole music scene and how they like the whole societal influences for their music.
sure.
Because there was a lot of things happening in the UK around about that time. So there was a lot of, like working class meaning,
Yeah, it's interesting.
very political as well. But it's music that people can feel a lot of joy
Yeah,
from listening to as well.
it's interesting because UK. I've always felt this, and I will get to wrestling in a second. But
Yeah,
there are people that like music, obviously, and I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, there's one difference I've always felt with UK music that's inspired versus US music for the most part. Whereas even when it's heavy metal, like Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, especially those bands were influenced in the '60s and the '70s about basically growing up in these poor towns, whether it's in
yeah,
Birmingham or Sheffield, and they kind of talked about those experiences. Obviously, Black Sabbath were factory workers, Tony Iommi
yeah,
losing his limbs and everything else. Ozzy, obviously, with all his problems. And then kind of in like the 70s and into the 80s, the later 70s, later 80s, and then into like
yeah,
the early 90s, we talked about some of these bands, the Oasises, the Stone Roses, the Smiths, the Happy Mondays. You almost kind of had that political like overtones where with the economy, the
yeah,
Cold War, everything else. And I kind of feel like that's always been one difference of like UK music versus like US music. Whereas UK music is kind of influenced kind of basically like the environment, the political overtones, and just everything
yeah.
around you. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I mean, but even then, like back when these bands were around, it's their music. You can still apply it to today's stuff that's happening here in the UK. I mean, there's a lot of things going on politically. I won't go into detail with it, but there is a lot of
I follow it. Trust me. I see it. I
so
see it.
so that music can still be applied to it, and it's that's just how amazing music is. I mean, I can listen to a song from 50 years ago and it could still apply to now. You know.
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, I 1000% agree with that. I was listening to the Beatles, Tax Man. I just did my
Oh,
taxes a couple of weeks ago. I was like, the Tax Man. Like, I just did my tax. And in fact, I just got a notice in the mail. I owe 50 pounds, the equivalent of 50 pounds. They actually got me on 50 extra pounds they owe me. I'm like,
oh,
did I not do them correctly? So, yes, there's no question that even stuff from the 60s and 70s still sounds great today and applies. And
yeah.
Callum and Jakes are obviously your cohort in the society
Oh,
says China of the UK scene. Yeah, I definitely think that you've got that lane. Maybe Shelby gives you a run, but Big Cheese also says take that are also a Manchester band, guilty pleasure. They don't call me the Big Cheese for nothing. Well, he definitely was. I mean, a couple of days ago, him and Joel Cobra, another tag team champion, were kind of going at it there. Kind of, it's very surprisingly, kind of an abrupt interference by the Big Cheese, and he'll be back with us though on
yeah,
May the 22nd. And Dante O'Cara says, "Woo Music Tech Crew." So that's some things. But I want to talk some wrestling here for a
yeah,
second because obviously I want to get into that because obviously we only have so much time. You're a busy person and such, but
yeah,
I got a chance to actually watch you for the first time live in the ring this
yeah,
past weekend. I've seen you before in the past, but I got to actually watch you live in real time in Wrestling Appreciation Society's Deadline. Obviously, a very, very successful event, raised over 1,000 pounds for cancer. So
yeah.
great job to everybody involved. And talk about that experience and being in the Rumble and how it's going to maybe transition us into this weekend. And talk about that for those listening and watching.
I mean, it was my first time really being in a wrestling promotion for quite a few months. Um, so it was very, very nerve-wracking because there was a whole different mix of talent in this event. I mean, we had we obviously had the Wrestling Appreciation Society guys, and they'd only been training for so many months, and then obviously we had other wrestlers there that are more seasoned. They've been at different promotions, so it was all kinds of different talents. But it was a really fun day, and everyone was just so lovely to work with. So I felt confident and in my element, and there was a lot of things that I could do in the Rumble. I eliminated Pride from the Rumble. That was a lot of fun.
I saw you were mixing it
Yeah.
up with a lot of guys. I gotta say, Jenny, you take me down, you probably would have took down at least a quarter of that roster there that were in that
So
Rumble.
I'm gonna be bragging about that, because a lot of people probably look at me and think, oh, a big frame guy like Pride, Jenny could never.
And he wrestled Disciple in GT Ministries. I mean, when Disciple was the champion, so that's a big feather in your cap there, Jenny.
Yeah, and then it was just really, really fun to kind of also have the rest of the society in there as well. I feel like we definitely made an impact, because the crowd, they absolutely hated me. Which I don't care, they're still entertained by me. So whether they like me or hate me, I still brought entertaining wrestling to them.
What did that mean to you, though?
Definitely remembered.
What did that mean to you?
It meant a lot, personally. It really meant a lot as well, just because of the clarity that was raising a lot of money for cancer research, because there's more and more people with cancer, and it's but personally I wanted to dedicate my time in the ring for people in my life that have had cancer. My grandparents had cancer before they sadly passed away, and it was kind of it was obviously it was a chance to show myself off as a wrestler, but it was also a personal thing for everyone, I think, in that event, just to raise money for a good cause, and also helping the next, I guess, kind of generation of wrestlers with their first show, because in the wrestling business there is always a lot of pressure from other people. There's always expectations of how people see you as a wrestler, how you carry yourself. And I know the WAS guys had a lot of pressure on them, but they took it and they allowed it to inspire them to put on a really good show, because I wasn't expecting them to be rubbish or anything, but they were even better than I would have thought they would have been. And for example, I mean, Remus, Kane and Callum were in a tag team match, and their opponents were
Phantom of the Outlaws. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it from, there was another platform above the actual stage where I could watch down from it. And just watching it, I thought, wow, because obviously with Remus and Callum, with their experience of being in the ring, obviously they had a lot to teach these guys. But I think,
yeah, I mean, Owen and Phantom, what did they have between them? Like one match? I think it was one match together. I mean, they had one match between the two of them. I mean, they never teamed together, and who would have guessed they would have had that kind of match? Honestly,
yeah. I mean, us as a society, we haven't forgotten about them, and I'm sure.
Well, if you saw Instagram, which I know you did, certainly Mr. Carter and Mr. Phantom Phoenix, they certainly haven't forgot you guys either. And they're coming back to Sportswire Radio. I got news for you. They're coming in a couple of weeks, by the way. We have a number of Wrestling Appreciation Society members that are actually coming back to Sportswire. So they want to talk. They're dying to talk.
I'm excited to hear what you might actually...
Well, one of them you might agree with, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes, which is kind of crazy. I'm saying that you might actually agree with that person.
Okay.
But, I mean, I was impressed with the event in the fact that they drew as many people as they drew in that environment, in that building, and what you were all able to pull up. So I think you obviously all need to deserve a huge round of applause, and I think that'll certainly go forward here. So how do you use an event like this where you get this elimination from Pride, you mix it up, you were in the Rumble for about, 4 or 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken? You were in there for a little while. And how do you use this then going into where we're going to see you next?
Again, it's just a case of I'm always micro-analysing myself after I've been in every match. I'm always asking for feedback from other people that I've been in the ring with, how could I improve for next time? And there's also other things that I analyse myself, and I'm doing a lot of training on basics, like ring awareness, rope runs and stuff. And I feel like I'm improving a lot more, but still, I've only been training for about a year and a half. So it's not as long compared to other people. You
Well,
know,
Callum's been there since basically like he was born. I mean, Callum.
mm,
And by the way, happy belated birthday again to Callum and Jake for the
mm,
upgrade. I mean, he's been wrestling for 10 years. I mean, he's
mm,
kind of. I guess it was him and I guess the return of old school MC2 for an appearance. Those would
yeah.
basically be our veteran elder statesmen there. So I mean, I'm sure you're asking them a lot of questions.
Oh yeah, the I mean, MC2 was, you know, one of the first people to really teach me
He was the
about
trainer here
wrestling.
for the NSAR.
Yes,
Obviously,
he
we
was
know
a
very well.
trainer at Non-Stop Action Wrestling for a while, and you know, he was always very strict, but also very patient as well. You know, and definitely was very human as well. You know, I wasn't going to be perfect from the get go. You know, so he's always been, you know, an amazing teacher. So it was really, really nice to see him again at Deadline because it was the first time I'd seen him in probably a year, but it only felt like it had only been yesterday that I'd seen him. So it was really, really nice to be, you know, working with him behind the scenes. And then I also got to work with his son in the Rumble, Danny Loco.
Oh
You
yes,
know,
of course, we know Danny.
he was also another
I was
phenomenal.
surprised Danny got eliminated the way he did. I was kind of thinking some build up there. I thought Danny was going to hang in there a little long. I know obviously you in the
Mm.
society didn't necessarily mind that, but I kind of thought Danny was going to hang in there a little longer. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling's really unpredictable. I mean, like for example, my elimination with Pride, you wouldn't expect me to eliminate him, but it happened, and you
Well,
know,
I
it
was
was
you know, it's
brilliant.
funny it's funny you said that because I've listened to people talk about this when they're in their rumbles. I'm like, "Hey, do they kind of tell you like I mean, they kind of conceptually have an idea, but nobody really knows like in a lot of cases like who eliminates each other. It's kind of like there's
Yeah,
eventually somebody has to win, but in terms of how it's getting there, like it's unpredictable. Literally, it's really
yeah. I mean,
that's probably the only unpredictable part of wrestling. If you think
yeah.
about
I
it.
mean, with any match, I mean, there's always going to be mistakes being made, but when you're in a rumble, it's a lot more chaotic, and that's where more of your in-ring abilities have to be used, like ring awareness and being aware of what's happening with other people. You know, so you know, no rumble ever goes perfectly. You know, you could have a list of how people are going to be eliminated and what's going to be happening, etc. But we've had it before where someone's been eliminated before this other person was meant to. So it kind of, when things mess up, you kind of just have to improvise with it. And sometimes these improvs have better results than the original match plan, you know. So
And you
that,
know
I
this
mean,
from the music
that's what
world. I mean,
that's the fun though in the wrestling though. You as an audience member, it's always going to be a surprise because you don't know what's happening. But it's also the same being in the rumble as well. You
absolutely.
know.
No, listen, totally. That's why we enjoyed the Rumble,
Mm.
and I will come back to that in a second. But there is some more comments. Skull says he likes your music. Well, thank you,
Thank
Skulls,
you.
for tuning in there and following Jenny's music. Michael Knowles says whistles. I wasn't one of them. Meaning, I think he wasn't one of the people booing you. I believe that's the case.
Yeah.
Skulls points out my mom had cancer 3 times and she beat it.
Oh,
We know that
oh,
very
that's
well. Very
amazing.
happy to hear that. I also want to say I had a little hand in raising some money for WAS. I actually gave a contribution, even though unfortunately I could not have attended because, well, I'm in the U.S., but I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I supported everybody there. And Dante O'Cara says, from what I've seen, it was an amazing event. Also, it says, I had a training match a few months back with Phoenix, and he's a talented athlete between the ropes. To say he had never been in the ring before. MC2, yeah, Oscar, who I took to an event, called him Baldy. He called him over that I stood up and he soon backed off. Well, why did he do that then? That's what I would want to know. I mean,
Mm.
old school, I've had old school MC2 on here in the past. I wouldn't want to get on his bad side. I mean, I've also listened to him in GT Ministry because he does commentary for them as well. But if you are on Sportswire Radio, I want to give myself a little bit of a plug. You can give me a follow and like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. Almost 600 followers. I thank everybody for that. Also, YouTube. I have a lot of new subscribers on YouTube. I think I got about 150 something now. I
Oh,
think
well
about
done.
almost 60 of them in the last few months. So I appreciate everybody tuning in and spreading the word. So that's on YouTube at Sportswire Radio 6579. Also, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/play. And I'll be back with more wrestling coverage coming up here next week with Jenna. Jenna, who was in the United States, by the way. Jenna has been all over the place. Bolton Town Wrestling, GT Ministries. They call him the king of the death match here in the UK. He's going to talk about his experiences of being here in the United States. We had him wrestle with our friends over at the Wrestling Warzone Connection in Southern California. So excited to have Jenna back. That'll be next Friday. Friday. Also have some more stuff in the works. We're also looking at the First Class coming back on, the Nomad Dalton Garrett and Champagne Charlie. So supposed
Yeah.
to be, yeah, very excited to have them. Supposed to be tomorrow, but I unfortunately have a scheduling conflict. But we're going to definitely have them back on here, and then
Yeah.
we will have more coverage ahead. So stay tuned for that. But we are having a great time right now with the rock idol of the UK, Jenny Hay. So Jenny, I have to ask you that. I mean, the society. It seems like you guys aren't done yet with Phantom and the Yellow. Obviously, you guys retain those tag team championships. But we have a big show coming up with Zenith. Zenith is in 3 weeks from this coming weekend, and a lot to be decided. And talk about that for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio for the future of the society.
Obviously, the society are going to be defending their tag team titles again. So that's going to be a big, massive event to showcase that, again, society will defeat whoever they are up against, for these tag team belt titles, because, they are gorgeous titles, and it's nice to have one to display at home. But I also have my first ever singles match in Non-Stop Action Wrestling at Zenith. I'm going up against Sarah Sky.
Wow. Oh, I know Sarah Sky very well. Wow, this is a big deal here, Jenny.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I've been wanting to face her for a while, because when we were at a charity show for Kirkwood Hospice.
Yep, the Tommy Dillon show, correct.
She was a thorn in my side. She was constantly interfering with me trying to help the society. So I thought, you know what? I'll face you one-on-one. And I opened the challenge for Zenith, and she's accepted it. So she's been active, within UKW, and I've been watching her, and she's a good wrestler, but she's still going to get pinned by me.
She's not the rock idol of the UK, you're telling us then?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm the only female wrestler at Non-Stop Action Wrestling, so I'm not going to let someone from an outside promotion come in and steal my thunder. This is my debut at Non-Stop Action Wrestling, and this is going to be the first female singles match in Non-Stop Action Wrestling, so I want to bring a good match, and show Sarah Sky and her little dogs of war that they're not to mess with the society, because, I feel like a lot of UK promotions know about the society now.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I've heard it. Listen, we've had shows with Firestar Wrestling, GT Ministries. You guys have been talked about in CCW, certainly. I mean, Blackheart in the past. I mean, you guys have been UKW. I mean, it's been numerous companies. What did I mention? 5 companies just now?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 companies.
And there'll be loads more to come.
Absolutely. No question about that. So do you feel then, because you're basically the queen of the Non-Stop Action Wrestling roster, you've also got this championship belt, do you feel then that this is your house, you have to defend your yard coming up here on May the 27th and kind of show Sarah Sky basically who's the boss, who's the queen? Oh,
yeah, definitely. I mean, I know we're going to have, outside female talent want to come to Non-Stop Action Wrestling, because it's a company that's definitely getting its name out there. So obviously a lot of other female talent are going to want to come in and show what they've got. But I've been at Non-Stop Action Wrestling since the day I started wrestling. That's my house, as Saraya puts it. But it's my ground. It's my, and I'm going to defend it. I'm not going to have somebody come into my house and take the keys and have it as their own. It's mine, and I'm going to show you the example that Non-Stop Action Wrestling sets for its female talent.
I have no doubt that you are going to do that, Jenny Hayes, and I have people that want to talk to you about this. Michael knows, I think we read that comment. Mr. BMD here, or somebody related to BMD, he comments as, I think it's BMD, I think I can say that right. Evening, guys. Evening, Jenny. He then goes on here, you guys have come a long way, and I can vouch to say you guys have made waves across the UK. Absolutely. Listen, I remember, can I say this? I remember first talking about Non-Stop Action Wrestling right around this time last year, and there were people through the grapevine, I'm not going to name the companies, that was saying, well, what are you doing speaking with Non-Stop Action Wrestling? What are you doing with them? They're wrestle kids, they're trainees. Why are you talking to them? And I'm like, why not talk to them? They're going out there, starting, they're living their dreams. They're
Yeah.
showing their heart. They're showing their love of professional wrestling. They want to go up and be in the world. Why not? This is exactly why you want to talk to people like this. And this is exactly why Nonstop Never Stop has continued here through over a year. Why you guys have gone on through leaps and bounds where all of you have been in these different places. Firestar. I've seen you in CCW, GTM, Blackheart in the past. I mean, it's a number of companies, UKW. And I say, why not? WAS, of course, as well here. And I have a ton more comments here. Speaking of Zenith, glad you brought it up that NSWORD needs to update that event so people can rebook it. Me being one, I think it's May the 27th. I think we just said that, correct? Yeah, that's what I thought.
All the promotions are going to be starting from today.
Well, I'm happy that we're starting those promotions. Well, and I have a feeling, Jenny, in the coming days and weeks, like I said, that we're going to be doing plenty of coverage here of Zenith, because on May the 16th, coming up here 12 days from now, I'm going to have on Matt Royale, who, by the way, won that Rumble that you're a participant in, and apparently he's going to be challenging Disciple for his world-class championship. So, I mean, I almost have to ask you. I mean, this is going to be a big event then, Zenith. So I think Zenith is going to be a huge part. You and Sarah Sky, and then we have that and the Society defending the tag title so far.
I will say, in terms of Matt Royale getting a chance at the world class title, nobody knew apart from our chairman Joshua Snow.
Well, he's here with us in a second.
So when it was announced then and there at the event that Matt Royale was going to be going up against Disciple for the world class title, it was phenomenal news for everyone, especially for Matt Royale, because he's worked hard and he's gained that opportunity, you know. So I'm very, very excited to see his match with Disciple in the future.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting, Jenny, because Disciple is going to be defending 2 world championships in 2 weekends. And on top of that, on the week of the 16th, we have Matt Royale on the 16th, who's obviously challenging Disciple for the NSWORD title. And then 2 days afterwards, we have Bentley, who's also challenging Disciple. And the week prior, in this Team Bentley versus Team Disciple match to decide who comes away with the GT Ministries World Championship. So by the time Disciple could be done, he may have no championships aside, and we're going to get a chance to speak with both Matt Royale and Bentley. And Bentley was just in the ring 2 weeks ago against Jack Johnson for the Bolton Town title. So it's going to be an interesting time here in the world of professional wrestling here. Dante O'Cara says, Jenny Hayes is a cornerstone of NSWORD, as are Remus Kane, the Golden Boy Connor Cage, and the Warhound himself, Dante O'Cara. Well, he didn't say Warhog, because now we knew somebody who used to be called something else, and now he's Warhog. So between the Warhound and the Warhog, I'm going to have to figure out which one is which. But I know they both are in war. But Mr. Snow, obviously, which I think you know Mr. Snow very well, correct? You know Mr. Snow? You might know him. I wholeheartedly agree. I was trying to be lighthearted with this, but shout out to Mr. Snow, obviously, because obviously you know him very well. And congratulations again with you and Mr. Snow. But I wholeheartedly agree with your assessment on the tag team titles. I also do want to see what you see and Sarah will absolutely do to tear the house down, as I know you two can do, which I have no doubt about that. And also, we see you this weekend coming up here. You want to talk about that here this weekend? We're going to see you at NBPW, a new company we spoke about here a few weeks ago with Young Horace.
Yep, I'm going to be part of the Rumble at that event. That's all I've been told. So I'm going to turn up when I'm needed and showcase why the Society have been invited to that event. Because obviously they're impressed with our skills. You know,
they should be. You guys are they should be. You guys are main eventers. I mean, Remus is going to be in the ring for Firestar Wrestling. I mean, we're going to see he's going to be a huge part of that card on June the 3rd. I mean, we've seen what Callum can do. And Callum, what he did against Gareth Angel, he clearly showed why he's the upgrade. I mean, he took him to the limit. I mean, a lot of people were surprised, but you guys weren't. I mean, we've seen what certainly MX Knights has done in leading you guys, so there's no question as to why more companies ahead, I think, are going to be with you guys. But I had to bring somebody up here before we move on here to a few other things, and I hate to do this because obviously he's been one of our favorites on Sportswire Radio, and I know obviously he means a lot to you guys in the group. Obviously, he's been one part of the tag team champions here, and that's kind of the sad news here. In a way that it was announced yesterday that the lawman Kyle Kennedy is no longer, for now at least we're going to say, is going to be able to compete in the ring as an in-ring competitor. Obviously, his match against Donnie Franchise certainly went wrong. There was obviously something that had happened there in the match and in there for the Youngblood title. And I wanted to ask your thoughts on that and just anything else on the lawman Kyle Kennedy. Obviously, really, really keeping our fingers crossed. We are happy though that his surgery was successful. But when it comes to the lawman Kyle Kennedy, just your overall thoughts and reactions to just the sad news that has gone on here that he is no longer going to be able to, at least for now,
Yeah,
compete in the ring.
it's probably the most devastating thing to have happened for. It's probably the only devastating thing that's ever happened, in the experience of being part of the wrestling scene. And it shouldn't have happened to Kyle Kennedy. He's one of the most hardest working people. The passion that he has for the business. He's probably one of the only people that has so much passion for wrestling that he'd eat and breathe it if he physically could. So to have what happened at Deadline, it was heartbreaking, especially on the day because, it happened and there was so much confusion. We weren't sure what was going to be happening. So there was this sense of unease for quite a while. And then suddenly we got the news that unfortunately it looks like he won't be coming back into the ring, because it's an injury that's absolutely debilitating, so it is really, really heartbreaking, and there's no words or actions that can ever get rid of the heartbreak and the devastation of it, especially when it's something he's been wanting to do for a very, very long time. And it's horrible. But he's got a big, massive family around him. And obviously, we want him to still be part of the wrestling business, even if he's not physically in the ring. He's always going to be part of the society and non-stop action wrestling, so it's also just a stark reminder to everyone out there in the wrestling business that we should be so lucky to have the matches that we have, to have the resources for training, and to never ever take it for granted because, things like this can happen and you can't ever do it again. So it is a stark reminder to everyone that this is the reality of the business as well. Enjoy it while you can, because you could be ending up with an injury that you can't ever come back from.
Listen, you never know out there. Unfortunately, there was an incident years ago on SmackDown with a wrestler Draws and D'Lo
Yeah,
Brown, and basically it was a power bomb gone wrong, and Draws is basically paralyzed for the rest of his life. And we've seen things happen
yeah,
with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Owen Hart. So SummerSlam 1997. I mean, Big E hasn't come back still. I mean, Big E was
no,
over a year ago. I mean, so unfortunately in wrestling, which I think people don't realize sometimes what you guys go through at any given moment, any given second. You
yeah,
guys could never be the same. And listen, Sting and Seth Rollins, Sting was almost paralyzed
yeah,
years ago there. I mean, you just don't know at this point. That's why we really want to give our thoughts and prayers to the lawman, Kyle Kennedy. And I want to give some
yeah,
comments to people that wanted to say a few things, and I want to say a few thoughts for him as well. The Swarm's thoughts and prayers are with the lawman. Absolutely. And Mr. Snow says, I saw the x-rays from the aftermath, and while we've never seen eye to eye, I would never have wished this upon him, nor anybody. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I wish him all. Wish him well, I think he meant to say. The lawman is amazing talent. We will always stand with him. I think everybody does in the world of professional wrestling. I wish him all the best. He's someone I never saw eye to eye with, but I would never have wished this upon him, not one bit. And I want to say this about Kyle Kennedy, because we've had him on. We call him Mr. Sportswire. We've had him on, I don't know, 8, 9 times. And what
yeah,
really impressed me most about him was in a short amount of time, look at with what he accomplished. I mean, he was a guy that
yeah.
was in GT Ministries, locked up with Gareth Angel. He was here
Mm,
on the stream one-on-one with Slugger Hampton, who, by the way, is one of the big-time guys here in the UK scene, former tag team champion in CCW. You look at what he's done in Firestar Wrestling. He was about to be a big part of the legendary Big Daddy Battle Royal. We're going to have him square off with the
yeah,
Big Cheese Logan. He came on the Big Cheese Logan stream, and that guy's a legend.
yeah,
And they were ready to go back and forth. We've seen what he did here in Ensor. He held the world title here for a brief period. I mean, the tag team championship. I mean, you think about all the companies that the lawman Kyle Kennedy put himself in, and he was the center. He was kind of the vocal point. I mean, he was the
Yeah.
guy. If you really think about this, and I hope I'm not going to offend anybody when I say this, but I really think, in my opinion, even though I love Disciple and Disciple is our champion, but I really think about when you think about as to why nonstop action wrestling has gone to the places it has been, it's really because of the promotion of the lawman Kyle Kennedy. He
Mm.
sold this company, despite maybe the issues with him and Snow, the issues with Champ Rogers, Tommy Dillon, Connor Cage in the past, everybody else you throw in there, you fill in the blanks. At the end of the day, the person in my mind that sold this
Yeah.
company and put this company to where it is and where it's going to be, it's because of Kyle Kennedy. Because Kyle Kennedy really was the first wrestler here at this company that got booked in different places. And he didn't just get booked. He got booked and he was a part of some big moments. In that Rumble he was in last year in GTM, I mean, he wasn't a pushover. You
No.
think about what he's in CCW, he was a part of some moments there. Didn't really have much in the ring, but you think about Blackheart Wrestling, what he did there. You
Yeah.
think about what he was going to do in Firestar Pro Wrestling. So I think in a lot of ways, Kyle Kennedy was the heart and soul of nonstop action wrestling. He is the definition of nonstop, never stop. And let me just say this here, as the host of the Sports Report and the owner of Sportswire Radio, to push it back. Anytime Kyle Kennedy wants a mic, he's got it here on Sportswire Radio. We're always going to wear his shirt. He's always going to be a part of the society. And I have no doubt this is just the beginning of his run in the world of professional wrestling, because I think he'd be a great commentator. I think he'd be a great manager. And I think he knows a lot about wrestling. And you hit the nail on the head. He eats, sleeps, drinks pro wrestling, and there is nothing else he knows. And I have no doubt that when it comes to the world of pro wrestling, the lawman Kyle Kennedy is still going to go on to bigger and better things. And I think it's only going to be the beginning. So let your hearts not be troubled, everybody. I have a feeling that Kyle Kennedy is going to bounce back. And if there's a will and there's a way that he can come back in the ring, he will. Because you know what? Shawn Michaels came back in the ring. Everybody said Shawn Michaels could never do it. Listen, Stone Cold Steve Austin after a broken neck came back. So listen, there are instances of people. How about Saraya? The most recent example, Saraya twice had the same injury, and she's out there in AEW. So you never know out there. Listen, if there's a will, there's a way, and I have no doubt that Kyle Kennedy will be back. He'll be back here on Sportswire Radio. Even though I'm heartbroken, it's a real shame and even more heartbreaking for him. Absolutely, truly gutted. Kyle was on my opponent's bucket list. Yeah, he was definitely on that list for a lot of people who wanted to scroll. Listen, even the Big Cheese Logan. The Big Cheese Logan told me he wanted Kyle Kennedy. BMD, who we had here before, BMD and him, they seemed like they were going to have a battle of the giants. But let your hearts not be troubled here, because I want to finish on a positive. You always want to go on positive, Jay. You always want to finish on a high note. And talk to me then about, in a way, how we're going to use what happened here with Kyle Kennedy as bulletin board material for the society at Zenith May 27th. So talk about maybe this in a way, we're going to use what's happened with Kyle Kennedy maybe to push even bigger for May 27th and further in the rest of this year. Talk to me about how we're going to use Kyle Kennedy as bulletin board material.
We're just going to showcase that despite what's happened with Kyle Kennedy, he's still strong. Physically, he can't get in the ring, but mentally and verbally, he can knock down any opponent. He's made his name known. The promos that he's put out against his opponents, and it's riled up his opponents. So he's come out with amazing matches, and he's brought out so much fire and passion from other people that he's interacted with and faced in the ring. So I hope that the inspiration that Kyle Kennedy has had on non-stop action wrestling is going to really give them a kick up the backside to really, really make Zenith a phenomenal show. And in terms of the society, I know a lot of people are going to think their lawman's been knocked down, so the society are weak. We've never been weak. We are brothers and sisters and MBs in arms. We're not nice people. I mean, that's obvious.
You're everywhere. Listen, the society is everywhere. That's been the motto of this group for almost 2 years.
But once you're within the society, the bond that we have is unbreakable. You know, you can't you cannot split the society. You know, Richard Knights, Remus Kane, they've lived for thousands and thousands of years, you know, and the society is still going strong. The society will still be going active and strong within the next 10, 20, 50, 30, 40, 50 years. You know, the name society, you just hear it and you know what it's all about. You know, and again, we're not gonna falter. I'm gonna bring it to Sarah Sky at Zenith. That I'm not gonna be held back. I don't care who I'm facing in the ring. You know, it's my first female singles match, but I've gone up against all kinds of different people in rumbles, matches, you know, any gender, any size of person. I do not cower down to, you know. Even if it looks like they could physically overtake me, I'm not going to back down. And that's the same with my other teammates from the society. Richard Knights, they have so much knowledge to bring to us and is such an inspiration as our leader. Remus Kane, he's wise. He knows how wrestling works. He knows how to play in the minds of his opponents. You know, and when he's in that ring, there's no holds barred. And then you have Callum McJakester. You know, he came into the society a bit later on, but you wouldn't have thought he'd only been here for 5 minutes. He's gelled with the society because deep down, destiny has always been there for him to be part of the society. He's been wrestling for 10 years and he may have only just joined the society this year, but he's showcased why he's part of the society. And then we have Kyle Kennedy. Despite the tragedy, he's probably one of the most well-known members of the society. He's made his name known in all sorts of promotions. You know, people know what Kyle Kennedy is about. He's powerful mentally. His passion is his biggest strength as well. So all of these different elements put together within the society is an unstoppable force that nobody can crack or even imitate. I see many different tag teams, stables, coming out into the UK scene trying to mimic what the society does. But nobody can do it like the society. We are the standard, and it's pretty high. So people better climb and climb and climb to try and reach that peak that we have set for the people in the UK wrestling scene.
Well, I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I think the society might actually be stronger than ever, and I actually think they're going to use exactly why I asked that question to Jenny, and she nailed it. She hit it out of the park, and that's why I have no doubt that the society are everywhere. They're stronger, more dominant than ever. It's all going to continue on May the 27th here, coming up in Zenith, because Jenny's going to get in the ring in her first official match here as a part of the roster. And Sarah Sky, to quote Rob Halford or Judas Priest, you've got another thing coming because Jenny's going to give you some British steel. You're going to eat some of that steel. And the ring post there in the Be Strong Performance Center and everywhere else, that's going to be at a non-stop action wrestling show. And Dante O'Cara asked, Kyle Kennedy tribute Rumble, Mr. Snow? Maybe. Thank you, Kyle Kennedy. I'm actually going to do this here for you. Thank you, love, man. Thank you, Lawman. I want to do that at least for a minute. Thank you, Kyle. I would say thank you, Lawman. I think thank you, Lawman sounds good. But I have to ask you one more question before closing thoughts. And I have to ask this question because his people have reached out to us. And I want to know what your thoughts are on him in a way. And it kind of ties into the Lawman, Kyle Kennedy. Donnie Franchise. Now, Donnie Franchise, of all people, now he was revealed as he was the masked attacker that attacked everybody on the WAS roster. We saw, I guess, kind of this maybe temporary alliance between, obviously, you and Mr. Franchise himself. And I was wondering, what is the future of Donnie Franchise in this society, if I could ask that question?
We may have been on the same side, the same fighting side for a little while during that short deadline. But once deadline finishes, we've got no use for you after deadline. We're still the society. You may have helped us. We're grateful for that, but we still don't owe you anything. You know, he's expecting us to welcome him with open arms, but all I've seen is someone who turned on a best friend, who turned on the people that worked with him. You know, his team at Wrestling Appreciation Society. He screwed them all over, and for what? What has he got to achieve from it? I mean, the society are well known among the UK scene. We've got tag team titles. What does Donny Franchise have?
Maybe he's jealous of the success. Maybe he's jealous of the fact that Matt Royale is the guy that got the match with Tommy Dillon. Maybe he's seen Sammy Rice and how people have viewed him, Zachary Zest, Phantom of the Outlaw. Maybe Donnie wanted it all for himself. Maybe that's what it is.
I mean, he's got the drive to want to achieve something. I don't know what it is right now, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this Donny Franchise, because right now for the society, you're not a franchise, you were just a guest star in this little episode of Deadline. You know, so you were just a filler for 5 minutes. You know, at Zenith, you know, we've got our defense of the tag team titles. I have myself fighting against Sarah Sky. Where do we have any need for Donny Franchise?
I don't know. I was curious, and well, I'm going to ask
no need for him. He can join the group of people that want to be our fanboys, like Dan Robertson.
Well, you know, it's funny because Dante O'Cara thinks that Dan Robertson has more of a chance of joining the society than Mr. Donny Franchise himself. Well, that's some strong words there, because we've obviously seen Mr. Robertson, what you guys think of him. You guys don't think much of Dan Robertson, so I mean, that's some strong words there from Dante. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna bring Mr. Franchise onto Sportswire very soon here. Maybe even as soon as next week. And I'm gonna ask Mr. Franchise his thoughts on some of this and why he did what he did. And I'll certainly I'm sure you'll tune into that. And Dan Robertson says, speaking of the devil, Dan Robertson is back because Dan Robertson heard his name. And Dan Robertson is another person I owe a microphone to. I owe a lot of people a microphone to on Sportswire because there are so many people left and right that want to come on, and I am going to get everybody on, I promise you. But we'll have to see. And Michael Knowles says he sold out. Screw Donny Franchise. Well, I mean, you know what? That roster there in WAS, I mean, if you heard what the fan in Phoenix said about him and you heard what Owen Carter said, I can only imagine the rest of that locker room, what's going on through their minds. So there's no doubt here that I have no doubts that, again, that Donny Franchise is going to have a lot of explaining to do, and he's going to get that opportunity on Sportswire Radio very soon. Real soon here. And Dan Robertson is speaking of the devil. Well, Dan Robertson is doing a lot of things. He's actually with some of the Devils in CCW, but I'm not going to ask you about Dan Robertson joining the franchise. But Dante O'Cara wants to say phony franchise. Well, he might be. But Mr. Robertson does want to say, hello, Jen. Lovely album. Condolences to the lawman. Much love to Remus. Much love to Callum. Jenny, you were all right. Do you think that Mr. Robertson is trying to get to you guys' soft spots again, or just want to move on? What do you want to say?
Some reverse psychology. He shows all the love to Remus, Kane, and Callum, still knowing that they're going to reject him. I guess he's thinking I'm the sweet spot, so he's kind of, I'm not actually bothered about you. But to be honest, he is bothered because, I mean...
I actually think you might be the toughest of all of them. Yeah, I think you might be the toughest of all of them. You might even have that Sharon Osbourne mentality where, Sharon was ruthless. She was cunning. Yeah. I mean, so you might have that personality. I don't know if I'd want any of that, Jenny.
I am quite scary when I want to be. So...
Listen, Sharon Osbourne famously one time was so mad at Bruce Dickinson, the singer of Iron Maiden, when Iron Maiden was playing in Ozfest one year, actually dumped, I think it was buckets of mud on top of Bruce Dickinson. So that shows you the kind of cunning personality that you may have, Jenny. And Callum Jakes just says, Dan Robertson being nice to me. Well, I mean, listen, maybe. I mean, we'll get everybody a chance on Sportswire very soon because that is coming up May the 27th, and we will definitely do a couple of days of coverage for it. We'll have Mr. Royale, who's going to be a big part of the show. Also, Mr. Franchise himself, because he has requested a microphone through his people, and we'll make that happen here. But Jenny, I know you've got to prepare for a lot of things coming up here, especially this weekend, some music and everything else. So I want to give you the opportunity to get some closing thoughts to us here listening and watching tonight. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and the floor is yours, and fire away.
Again, if you're coming to Non-Stop Action Wrestling's Zenith on May 27th, if you haven't got your tickets, get them now, because it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal event. It's kind of our equalization to WrestleMania, so there's a lot of amazing talent in there, so definitely come along and watch. In terms of music, I've got a new song coming out called Offender, coming out on all social streaming, all music streaming platforms on the 26th of May, but you can pre-save and pre-order it on Spotify as well as Bandcamp. Any money that I gain from this release goes straight back into new music, which I have more planned for the rest of the year. So definitely follow me on my Instagram and Twitter for constant updates of my music being released. And then I also have another show on the 3rd of June, which is Leeds Anime Con. So that'll be my first show after the release of my single Offender. So I'll definitely be performing that again. And yeah, just keep streaming my music. I've been getting a new surge of listeners the last few weeks. So that's been really, really nice to have new people come and join the Rock Idol cult, I guess. And again, follow the society as well. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up. And definitely follow Non-Stop Action Wrestling on all of our social medias as well, because there's a lot of stuff happening. We're constantly working and bringing out new things for you guys. So
Absolutely. You can do that at NSOR Wrestling UK on Instagram, Nonstop Action Wrestling on Facebook, also NSOR _UK on Twitter as well. Also, YouTube, subscribe to Nonstop Action Wrestling. Also, Jenny Hayes Idol on Instagram. Also, give her a follow and like on Facebook, YouTube. You can find her on Bandcamp. You can also find her on Spotify, YouTube. Just do a search and see a whole bunch of music come up. And one more for the road here. A new theme for you at Zenith. So I guess maybe I should ask, is it new theme? So maybe stay tuned, I guess. Stay tuned, possibly.
you'll have to wait and see. You'll have to get your tickets to Zenith to find out, I guess.
Well, I'm going to be
live
watching.
stream.
I'm looking forward to it because what I love about the NSOR shows is that you guys stream them on Instagram, so I actually get a chance to watch them. I have basically I have a setup here. I get to put the almost like not a mic stand, but almost like a cell phone stand, and I put the phone on the stand, and I get to watch you guys. So I'm very excited about that. So that'll be a lot of fun. Also, going to see new music June 3rd, Leeds Anime Con. So for more information, go follow Jenny for that. So definitely all great stuff. And Jenny, congratulations on the music. Love the EP. I really am honored to have had the opportunity to get a copy. I'm really honored to looking forward to playing more music from you and talking about your journey as part of the tag team champions here in Nonstop Action Wrestling. And keep up the great work. See you out there in the ring, and we'll definitely see you soon here on Sportswire Radio.
Yep, been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Jenny Hayes, the Rock Idol of the UK, has a brand new song coming out here, Offender, later this month. She'll also be in the ring this weekend for NBPW. They've got a big show. Go to NBPW's Instagram page. You can also catch Jenny on May the 27th, Nonstop Action Wrestling Zenith. She'll be a part of a huge show. She'll be against the first ever all-women's match against Sarah Sky, so very excited about that. You'll see her in a number of different companies, I have no doubt, very, very soon. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sportswire Radio. And if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I'll actually be back right after Backlash this week. And I'll have a show with the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast guys. We'll talk about the show. We'll talk about how it went and where. So you can catch that here right after Backlash. But until then, thank everybody for tuning in on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Good night, everyone.